Hey everyone, this is Richard, CEO and founder of altFINS. In this video, I will discuss where we are in the current bull market run in the alt season, and perhaps what's the outlook in the next few weeks. I'll also touch on Ethereum, technical analysis, and Solana as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Well, if you've, unless you've been living under a rock, you've noticed that the altcoins have woken up, right? After Bitcoin made some new all-time highs, the altcoins took to the rally as well. And you know, the OG, the original altcoin of all of them is Ethereum. It's had a phenomenal run in the last 2 weeks, almost uninterrupted green candles in the last 2 weeks, almost too good to be true, frankly. It's up 60% in the last month. And a few others, I mean, you know, most of them up nice high double digits. Ripple was hitting new all-time highs, up 70% in the last month. Solana up 48, but still off from its all-time highs. In any case, so we've had a pretty good run, and obviously everyone's kind of scratching their heads. What's next? You know, do I keep buying? Do I hold what I have? Do I trim? Do we have more upside, right? And so I'll try to provide some answers. I mean, in short, I am still bullish from these levels. We think it will still gonna go higher in the next few months. By the end of the year, I think the altcoins can hit, many of the major altcoins can hit their 52-week highs, or maybe even all-time highs. Let's see how far are we from all-time highs. Let's go to instruments. Or let's see, price down from all-time high percentage, and also how far down are we from the 52-week highs. Okay, so Ethereum obviously is basically at all-time high. It just made all-time highs in the last week or so, but Ethereum is still down 24% from all-time high, right? And that was in I think November of last year, when it hit 4,000 and some, just over 4,000. So we're still a bit ways from that. And even from 52-week highs, down 10%. Ripple obviously making all-time highs, but Solana still down 32% from all-time highs, and 52-week highs as well, right? So, you know, Dogecoin and others, you know, there's still plenty to go before we start hitting even the 52-week highs. Maybe we'll never hit the all-time highs for some of these, but 52-week highs, yeah, you know, those basically that were made in November and December, I could see that. And then so we've got easy 50, sometimes 100% potential upside. Now, we're not going to go straight up. There's going to be corrections. There's going to be pullbacks, right? Obviously, one way to go about it is just buy it, forget about it, and hold it. And that's a valid strategy. I try to time my entries as well, and exits to sort of protect my gains as well, because I could be wrong. There could be a major correction here. Things could happen. I mean, the inflation, interest rate data points could surface that could jitter, you know, cause some market jitters. The Fed could signal that they're not going to cut interest rates this year because inflation is rising or whatever, right? So there's, I think, particularly macro reasons that could derail this rally. Let's take a look at Ethereum. All right. So here we are. This is a 1-year chart. This is a 200-day moving average here. Now, as I mentioned, you know, the major 52-week high was back here in December at about $4,089, or actually maybe even higher, at $4,100 or so. We're getting pretty close there. We're getting pretty close now. Price is at 3,600, 3,700, right? So we're about 10% away from 52-week highs. Now the all-time highs were, I believe, let's see if we can yeah, so all-time highs, I suppose, were back maybe here in March or early 2024, but you know, more or less about the same level as what we saw then again in May of 2024 and again in December and a couple of times in December of last year. So $4,000 level, 4,100 call it. Anytime there's an all-time high, that tends to be resistance, right? Traders are aware of that level. They might start, taking profits here to see what happens around this level. So there's going to be a period, I believe, a period of some consolidation, some maybe sideways action like we saw in Bitcoin. If we look back at Bitcoin, right, there was a period of consolidation here around the $100,000 level, then pulled back. Then again, once it pierced through that $100,000, $110,000 level, it was a period of consolidation here as well before it broke out of that, right? So Ethereum, the $4,000 level, it's a pretty major key level and resistance level. So we've gone almost parabolically straight up. I mean, it's been last 2 weeks. It's been mad. It's been crazy. Right? Look at this. I mean, really from this level, 2,500 to now, and this was about 2 weeks exactly. There was only one red candle until today, and we'll see if it closes down today. But there's only a tiny little red candle. I mean, basically 2 weeks of uninterrupted green candles, up and up. Amazing. Now, again, we're about 10% from all-time highs of 4,000 or so. I think there's going to be a pause here. I think the advance is going to slow down. I could be wrong, but I think the other thing that suggests that we're overbought is the RSI indicator, right? That's a really good indicator to track if we've just gone too far too fast. I mean, if I were to sort of naively interpret RSI, the relative strength index, is typically the RSI ranges within 0 and 100. 100 is super extreme overbought. Typically over 70 is already overbought, but in the bull market you can see over 70 often. But when it gets over 80 or 85, right now it was 81 now, but it was as high as 87 yesterday. That's a bit scary. It gets a bit sketchy there, a bit dizzy when that happens. So I typically pair back. I might be leaving some money on the table here. Maybe goes higher still in the next few days. But I'd like to see the RSI pull back a bit before I get involved in it again. If you look at a similar situation back here in May, RSI hit as high as 85. So not quite 87 that we saw yesterday, but got as high as 85, pulled back a bit, made a little more here, and just kind of went sideways, right? Pulled back. There was a lot of demand, buying demand, and look at the 200-day moving average was kind of a dynamic resistance level here for a long time until it finally decisively pierced through that. So I think we might get a little bit of this kind of sideways price action, maybe with some pullbacks here around this level now, digesting the gains. Some traders will be taking profits, right? It's a lot of psychology. That's kind of what the price and technical analysis is. It's kind of reading the tea leaves, reading what the traders are thinking, sitting on some fat gains here. It's likely that they're going to be taking some profits in the near term is my guess. Now, if we look at a longer history, right, and look at, let's just turn off the MACD histogram for now and just focus on RSI levels. All right, RSI here got as high as 79, and then price pulled back. Let's actually go to trading view chart. Okay, this is a longer history here, all the way from beginning of 2024. Let's get rid of 𝗥𝗲𝗍. That's not important right now. Let's focus on RSI and the price. Right, here we are right now. Look at this, really sharp advance here. It really resembles a couple of these rallies in recent history, which was in November of 2024, right? After the presidential elections in the US, it rallied from about the same level, about 2,400 to 4,000, right? Within a month or so, month and a half. Similarly, back in early 2024, it rallied about from the same level, 2,200 or so, all the way to 4,000 with a few pullbacks, not a lot. It resembles what we're seeing here, but there were full pullbacks, and there are going to be pullbacks here as well. Now, having said that, if you look at the RSI here back in early 2024, it stayed elevated, almost for the most of the run. So the RSI indicator, sometimes assets can remain overbought in a very extreme bullish environments. They can remain overbought for a while. This asset was overbought here, 81, and the price was, call it, at around right here 3,300. It was overbought and kept rising for another 20% until 4,000. So the RSI is not perfect, but most of the time when you see RSI get a bit overbought, there's a pullback. There's a pullback here, right here. The RSI got to 79. There was a pullback here about, call it 15%. So there was there was a sort of a pullback or sideways action here in May after the RSI got really high at 85. 87 that we saw yesterday. We haven't seen that level in a couple of years at least. So I am cautious in terms of the near term, literally next few days, maybe a week or two. I like to see the market pull back a little bit, cool off, the RSI pull back to at least 70 or so before I get involved again, right? The nice part is that a lot of these assets are in an uptrend. And by the way, if you want to look at the momentum, if the assets are oversold, here we go. We see that Bitcoin is actually, let me move this over here. So you have RSI 9, 14, 25. Most people use the RSI 14. It's based on the last 14 days. And as you can see, Bitcoin is neutral. That's because it's been kind of going sideways, so it's not overbought. While Ethereum, Ripple, Solana, Binance token, Dogecoin, Cardano, and many others are overbought. And in fact, overbought is when the RSI exceeds, it's above 70. But in this case, many of these are well above 70, even above 80. Like Ethereum is almost 80. Ripple at 82, Solana 81. So this is, these kinds of levels for RSI across the board for many of the assets here is rarely, a situation, rarely a time when they're so overbought. You can filter, by the way, if you just wanted to see which assets are not overbought. Okay, then you can filter that. That's easy. That's you can either do that through the filter here, right? And find RSI indicator here and say, show me all assets that are not overbought, so are under 70. Okay, so do that, right? can do the opposite and look for those that are overbought. Maybe you have some in your watch list or a portfolio, which you can also, by the way, then further filter this list based on your watch list or your portfolio. Okay. Let's see, on my watch list. Yeah, there's some that are overbought. But the other thing, you can also use the Copilot and say, show all assets that are very overbought, RSI over 80. All right, so it gives you, multiple choices here, even using the stochastic or other indicators, which are also indicators used to ascertain if an asset is overbought. But we want to use the RSI. He used the 75. Fair enough. So we click on that, and basically that filter is applied here. As you can see, these are all the assets with RSI above 75. And now I can also apply my watch list and see how many of these assets on my watch list are overbought. And then I can do further analysis. Now, this is particularly important if the asset is overbought and is very close to a resistance level. Okay, we call that overbought at resistance. For example, if you go to Ethereum, technical analysis, all right, this asset is approaching resistance, right, and is overbought. So in fact, we have here the pattern type is overbought at resistance, right? You can find more of these technical analyses, or we also call them trade setups, under the technical analysis section. We discuss a lot of these in our VIP Telegram group as well. But here you can search for various pattern types. One of them is overbought at resistance. As you can see, all of these, about 13, 14 of these are overbought at resistance. Let's take a look at, for example, LDO, right? Reached about $1.20 resistance level, and it's very overbought. And that's, you can see, usually there's a pause or pullback around that level. The situation here is actually even more interesting because the horizontal resistance of $1.20 also lines up with the 200-day moving average. Okay, let's take a look here at the live chart right here. Okay, let's get rid of this one. As you can see, this is a 200-day moving average. The price has crossed above it, but there is also the horizontal resistance at $1.20, and it's overbought, or it was yesterday at 81. It still is today with RSI 74. So my guess is we're going to see a little bit of pullback here before Lido continues its advance. It's in a solid uptrend, and breaking above the 200-day moving average is a very important indication of uptrend. But when you see an RSI that's overbought near resistance and near 200-day moving average, is when we certainly think that there's going to be a pause in the price path. Okay, and then you can see a lot of these are pulling back here today, right? Dodge as well. All of these are overbought at resistance here. Ethereum, Tezos, Algorand, and so on. So these I would avoid. Now again, some of these may just go parabolic anyway. And like I said, sometimes assets can stay overbought for a long time. But from a risk management perspective, I think the chances of a pullback are higher than the chances of near-term continued advance, right? Now, not saying that these assets, because they're in an uptrend, these assets could very well continue its uptrend after the pullback, and I'm going to try to find those pullback opportunities. and swing trade into those again. But again, in the near term, I would avoid these. Now, another clever way of finding such critical point, such critical levels is, let's do that filter again. So we have RSI is above, okay, is very overbought, over 75. Okay, so that's about 189 assets. And at the same time, or actually, let's do this. Let's go back to the results here from the AI Copilot and go back and tell him that on top of this filter, I want also assets that are within 5% of their 200-day moving average. Because 200-day moving average often acts as a resistance level. All right, so let's see, he has a link here for us with assets that are near the 200-day moving average. Okay, but he did not keep the RSI filter, so I'm going to put that in there. RSI is very overbought. Wow, okay. So we've got about 6 of these. Here we are again. These are assets that are within 5% of their 200-day moving average. Okay, as you can see, it's a level where oftentimes the price pauses its advance. And if we add the RSI, do it again, RSI, very overbought, add filter. Okay, there's 6 of these. Okay, again, these are assets that I would be certainly worried about. All right, but even with the RSI, without the RSI, you know, it's when anytime a price approaches a 200-day moving average, there tends to be a pause, right? Look at all these. Mantle, reach 200-day moving average, pause, right? Some of them have broken through it, which is also a great signal to see. All right, so in conclusion, I think that it's good to be a bit cautious now at this level of the rally. I think that overall there's still upside for the rest of the year. I just think the next few days, anytime you see an asset that's really overbought with RSI over 80, 85, it's good to either take some profits or move your stop loss levels or take profit levels up as the price continues to rise, because there is likely to be some pause or correction, I think, in that assets or even overall in the market in the next few days. Now, I will use those corrections to jump back in and buy on the pullbacks. So let's see what happens in the next few days and check back, and hopefully I'll have another video posted with my views in the next few days. Thank you for watching. Keep in mind that this video is for informational purposes only, not meant to be financial advice, and do your own research. Thank you and good luck trading.